Welcome to another battle report from the Brotherhood of Broken Banners. Today's match is part of our tournament series, as it's the finals of a local tournament we ran at Rogue State Games in Mahwah, New Jersey. You'll be watching two friends of the show, Ryan and Derek, pitting off in a battle of the Stormcrows. That's right, we have Jokin and Daario going head to head with some creative list building on both sides, as this is part of our 40 plus 4 tournament. That means each player had an extra 4 points specifically reserved for attachments to be put into their list. Ryan's list was led by Daario, one of Ryan's pocket picks. He has them in the Queen's Men, a tanky unit that gets a lot of mileage out of Daario's commander cards and abilities, both offensive and defensive. Next up is the King's Men with Jokin attachment. Although normally you see Jokin in a ranged unit, his precision buff does work in melee as well, and he still lets you take the powerful Widower attachment for free, in this case on the Rolor's Faithful. This pairing is going to dominate any melee they get into, since the Faithful have their own built-in rerolls for charging, and Widower gives you a free charge if Jokin's attached. Combined with their fast move speed, the Widower can set up some nasty flank charges if allowed to do his own thing. Next on the list is the Rolor Lightbringers with Brawn attachment, one of the best attachments for archers that you can get. You will dominate most range duels you get into, between the boost to defenses and the extra attacks you're able to put out, and you can really harry an enemy who's trying to close the distance to stop you from putting out those ranged attacks. Finally, for combat units, we have the new Baratheon staple, Crownland Scouts, with the added bonus of a Fortune Seeker for yet another motivated by coin, and a Dauntless effect to complement their relatively good morale score. For the NCUs, Ryan chose two, Axel and Alistair Florent. Axel is a great way to dish out extra condition tokens, especially when trying to force through the Lightbringer panic bombs. And Alistair can help control the bags, either by swapping your opponent off of them, or claiming them and moving off yourself so that you get 3 uses between the swords and the bags for all of your motivated by coins. Derek brought an interesting list led by Jokin, one of my personal favorite commanders. Jokin is in one of his natural homes, the Stormcrow Archers, which is a great place to attach brothers in arms. Jokin brings along the commander version of the Widower attachment, with the Vassal ability to count as Jokin for any cards and effects that care about that. Widower will be in the Shadow Tower Spearman, giving that unit a ton of offensive capability should they be charged first, between set for charge, hold the line, and sundering. To keep the Stormcrow train going is an interesting pickup of Stormcrow Mercs with both John and Satin being fielded. John is of course accompanied by Ghost, since that's one of the most efficient units Night's Watch have access to. Satin is used as yet another instance of Jokin on the battlefield, helping power up the various commander cards and effects that key off being near Jokin. John helps provide more utility and makes Mercs a threat at 11 inches away guaranteed. One interesting synergy with this list is that Brothers in Arms can be attached to John's unit, but Ghost will count as having it and benefit from it to give your quick and small 3-point unit a ton of offensive power. To keep multiplying all this damage, and for a bit of defensive safety, the Watch Marshal can give your units more dice on the attack and knocks off a damage from failed panic checks if Night Watch are ever so unfortunate to roll those. Finally, for combat units, we have all reliable Sworn Brothers, and Derek chose to spend his last 2 attachment points on Sam for the extra tactics cards and hand size. Having reliable access to Brother in Arms and ways to help pass panic checks will be very useful in a high synergy list like this. Rounding out the list are 2 NCUs, Aemon and Malister. Aemon needs no introduction, as he's been the same uber efficient healing source since the actual 2021 patch. Malister can influence a unit to give them a version of Battle Scars, with condition tokens in place of Vicious, which makes him a pretty formidable tool for keeping units like Stormcrow Mercs and Sworn Brothers pumping out the damage. The game mode for this round is Dance with Dragons. 3 sticky objective, each with an objective card on them. Claiming these objectives reduces your movement speed to 2 and makes you unable to march. So basically, full speed for Ryan's army. Kidding aside, grabbing the point normally makes your unit a juicy target to collapse on by the enemy, so it's all about how defensive you can be once you get these points. Start of the round has Ryan and Derek rolling off. Derek wins the dice roll and chooses to put a bog down under the center objective. Ryan counters by putting trees down into the bottom left quadrant. Derek, wanting some good morale, puts a weirwood tree in the top left quadrant, and Ryan puts down his own weirwood tree in the bottom right quadrant. We flip over the objectives, and it's healing, panicked, and sundering. We roll off again for turns inside, and Ryan wins the dice roll, making Derek deploy first. Derek puts his spearman with widower down in the center at an angle. Ryan counters with his own widower in the faithful in the center. Next up is Derek's Stormcrow archers being placed down at an angle with a small gap between the two. Ryan, not to be outdone, puts his own Jokin in the Kingsmen down next to his widower. Derek then grabs his watch marshal and snuggles it between his Jokin and widower. It's almost like he plans that. Ryan grabs Daario in the Queensmen and puts them down slightly offset from the near objective. The Sworn brothers are then placed down, eyeing the far objective. Ryan then grabs his Crownland scouts and slides them in between Widower and Daario. Ghost is taken and placed next to Sam, all the way up there. Ryan's going to grab his Lightbringers now as his last unit, and he's going to put them down on the far end, facing all of the melee units. Finally, Derek's going to grab his Stormcrows, Mercs, and put them in the back line behind Sam and Ghost. With all that out of the way, we're ready to start round one. Derek gets to choose who goes first, and he gives Ryan first player. Ryan then takes Axel and puts him on the letters. His influence goes on the Stormcrow Mercs, which panics them, and then he uses the letters zone to weaken Jokin's unit. Derek activates Malister and puts on the horses. He influences the Sworn brothers and then slides them forward. Ryan goes for an early activation with Braun and inches him forward, threatening that entire quadrant of the board. Derek does some measuring and decides to activate Widower and march him forward. Because Derek brought 8 activations to this fight, Ryan has 2 pass tokens, and he chooses to use one here. However, at the start of Derek's turn, he uses tactical reposition to slide Jokin's unit forward. Derek then activates his Sworn brothers and marches them forward just far enough to clip the far objective. Ryan uses Sellsword Bravado at the start of his turn. However, he fails the morale check, so nothing happens with that one. Ryan uses Alistair and claims the bags, and Braun is going to inch backwards and make a ranged attack on the Sworn brothers. 7 dice on 3s, but he only manages 2 hits. Derek makes one and fails one. However, he passes the morale check with flying colors. Derek activates the Stormcrow Mercs and finds he has just enough distance to jump over Ghost. Ryan then activates Daario and marches him forward. The marching continues, and Jokin decides to get up in the middle of the fight, marching basically his full distance. More squaring up, and the Crownland scouts get their free maneuver and then edge forward a little bit farther. Start of Derek's turn, he uses Sam's ability, pitches 2 cards, and searches for another one. He then moves the Watch Marshal up near John and Jokin. Ryan realizes he has a start of friendly turn ability as well, and he marks target Widower for vulnerable. Ryan then activates and moves Jokin's Kingmen forward. Derek plays the dreaded Brothers in Arms onto Jokin. Aemon claims the swords, healing a wound on Sam's lost unit. Jokin then inches forward Derek counts up all the dice he gets to roll and manages 9 hits with his rerolls because he has the swords. However, the weakened token that Ryan put out earlier comes in clutch here, and he only does 1 wound and 1 hit after all the rerolls. Ryan fails it anyway. However, he does pass his panic check and gets a faith token for the trouble. Attack repo is used on John's unit to slide it up further. He realizes his own start of turn and uses a second sellsword bravado. He uses it to panic and weaken Jokin's unit again. Ryan then edges the King's men forward. Lastly, Ghost gets a light that brings the dawn attached to him and slides over to Jokin's other flank. Battle lines have been drawn. Jokin is set to do a lot of damage this round if Ryan can't find a way to stop it. Likewise, Bronn is ready to machine gun out damage himself on the Sworn brothers that are sticking out. Start of the round, Dennis will claim swords and influence Sam's Sworn brothers again. Derek's going to measure it out and choose to attack Widower with Jokin. Rerolls with their ability of holding the swords, and then a weakened bring it down to only 6 hits. Ryan rolls 3 5-up saves and manages to pass the panic. Axel is going to be activated. He's going to go onto the bags. He's going to influence the spearmen to panic them. Bronn is going to replace the shot onto Jokin's unit. 5 hits, 3 wounds, and then a failed panic into a fire that burns against the cold to pass it. Aemon's going to go onto the letters. He's going to heal 1 onto Jokin's unit, and he's going to weaken Bronn's Lightbringers. Alistair is going to go onto the crowns, replacing it with Sellsword Bravado, healing 2 onto Widower's unit. Start of Derek's turn, and tactical reposition is used on Daario's unit to slide it further into the fight. Derek's going to activate Jokin's unit and fire onto Widower again. Stormcrow archers give the faithful a vulnerable token now, and Derek rolls a massive 8 hits and 2 wounds. However, Ryan manages to save 3 even after the rerolls. This leaves the unit alive with 2 wounds after passing the panic check. Ryan decides discretion is the better part of valor and walks the injured unit back 6 inches. Derek's Widower with the Shadow Tower Spearman then moves forwards, nudging up and just claiming the objective. He also remembers to put "and now his watch is ended" onto the unit at the start of the turn, quote unquote. Ryan uses his other pass token, so Derek gets to go again. He activates the Sworn Brothers and decides to try to get them a little bit closer to the fight and moves up the Mighty Two. Ryan activates the Queensmen, and with a march and some fancy pivoting, manages to grab the near objective token. Watch Marshal's then activated, and he slides around out of range of all the scary units, but still within 6 of both Jokin and Widower. Crownland Scouts then activated, and they move up and stare longingly at the spearmen over the bog in the center of the battlefields. Ghost is activated, and he more or less dances in place. At the start of Ryan's turn, he's going to mark target onto the archers. Also, the start of Ryan's turn, Derek uses tactical reposition from the Watch Marshal to scoot the archers backwards. Ryan finally activates Bronn's unit and actually chooses to shift back an inch as he shoots the Sworn brothers. He only lands 2 hits. Derek chooses not to go for broke, and he ends up failing both. He pitches Shields of the Realms of Men for the reroll, and he still fails both. Not taking any more chances, Stalwart Mercenaries gives them a pass on the panic, since Satin is within short range, and Satin is counted as Jokin. Derek then activates the Stormcrow Mercs and moves them into auto-charge range. Ryan scoots his Kingsmen forward And with that, the round ends 2-1, favoring Derek. Round 2 saw a lot of vying for board position, pivoting around their respective archers. Derek has the edge at the moment, with a very tough to crack unit in the middle of the board. Let's see how Ryan can respond to that. Derek uses the effects of the 2 points he controls to put out a panic token onto the Crownland Scouts and heal up the Jokin's unit. Kicking things off, Ryan claims the swords with Axel, influencing Jokin's unit. He has his Lightbringers make a ranged attack onto the Sword Brothers. 3 hits and 2 wounds. The panic check is passed, even through a pretty dicey reroll. Derek has Aemon take the bags and heals 3 onto the Sworn Brothers and 1 onto Jokin's unit. Alistair is then used on Ryan's side, claiming horses and moving Daario's Queensmen towards the fight. Alistair then uses his ability to swap places with Aemon on the bags, so now he controls the zone, and importantly, Derek doesn't. Derek activates Jokin units and attacks, landing a paltry 4 hits. That's enough to knock off a horse, though. And with an unlucky panic, there goes another. Start of Ryan's turn. Derek then uses tactical reposition and slides the spearman backwards. However, Ryan is undeterred, and he charges the spearman. He lands it even with the reduced movement speed. Derek then uses set for charge, and he gets +1 dice from being near the watch marshal. He lands 5 hits, and Ryan saves 3, and he passes his panic check. Ryan's turn to attack. He plays Reckless Strikes to get crit blow and precision. With the rerolls, he makes 3 wounds and 7 hits. A bad defense roll means Derek takes all of that, and Derek also fails the panic check. They'll realize he shouldn't have lost any wounds in a second, but for now, Derek drops the objective after the results of the attack, and Ryan puts it in front of him. Derek also drops, and now his watch is ended off of his unit. Derek uses the attack trigger to trigger diversion tactics on Jon Snow's unit. The start of Derek's turn sees him play the second brother in arms, and Ryan uses tactical reposition to get Crownland Scouts as far forward as he can. Derek then activates and declares a charge onto the Lightbringers with Jon Snow's unit. He uses Reckless Heroism for the auto 6. He rolls his wounds and only takes 1. A Sword in the Darkness is played, and he gets partially countered by a Stag's Wit. The vulnerables bounce back onto Jon's unit, but the panic token stays on the Lightbringers. Derek lands 4 hits, and even with Bronn bringing their defenses down to 3, he rolls 3 failures. He does pass the panic, even through a reroll. Derek chooses to activate Ghost immediately after Jon with its ability. He scoots the good boy up 6 inches, and then immediately declares the charge onto the Crownland Scouts. It's auto in, and he aligns with it so that he can pick up the objective token that was dropped. The tricky synergy happens, and Brothers in Arms gets counted for Ghost. So he rolls 4 hits, and Ryan takes 3 of them, but he does pass the panic. And this time, that heals him 1 because of the Fortune Seeker. Ryan's turn, he activates the Crownland Scouts and sustain assaults the attack for rerolls and highest attack dice. Ryan spikes all 7 hits, and Ghost rolls poor enough that was enough to end him right there. Ryan grabs the objective token and surges backwards as far as he can, which is a full inch. Derek plays, and now his watch is ended to heal up the Stormcrow mercs by 2 and puts a vulnerable token out onto the Crownland Scouts for doing the killing. Malister is then used. He claims the letters, influencing the Spearmen, and weakening Jokin's unit. I think what happens next is a misplay because Derek then activates the Spearmen, hold the line for 3 hits, and Ryan fails 2. His normal attack then comes out, and he rolls 4 hits total. Ryan takes another 2 wounds, but easily passes the panic check. Derek plays Take the Black and heals a few wounds off of that. Next up, Bronze Lightbringers make an attack and manage to hit 2 hits, standing melee. Derek fails 1 after a reroll, and he also fails the panic, which drops the Brothers in Arms. Derek gets to activate. He tries a War Cry and fails it. He then activates his Watch Marshal, and in a Hail Mary, tries to charge the Queen's Men. A mighty 3 hits, and the trees cancel out the flank, so Ryan only fails 1. More importantly, Ryan passes the panic check there and doesn't drop the token. Ryan goes for the long bomb charge to knock the objective off the Sworn Brothers, but fails. And Derek, realizing he can possibly kill the Kingmen in 1 activation, offers a handshake as there's no time left on the clock. The final score was only 4-3, favoring Ryan. To recap this game, it was played well by both sides, with strategy and positioning being pretty tight overall. However, as I'm sure you noticed, they barely finished round 3 before they ran out of time with the match. I feel that the game could have gone either way at this point. Ryan had a lot of low health units or units that were engaged with enemies that were ready to eat him up, but he also had his 2 main damage dealers in the middle of Derek's armies and could have chopped through them with enough time. This just goes to show how important it is to prepare and practice for a tournament. You never play as quick and clean in the last game of the day as your first, so it's important to build up your endurance and shortcutting and preparing for the smaller things. I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode. It's always great to be able to do these, and I'm always happy to showcase the community and what they're able to brew up. For anybody who's going to Captain Con this weekend, I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope it's a great tournament. Be sure to go say hi to Assad. I'm sure he'd love to see everybody that watches our content. Please like, comment, and subscribe so we know that we're doing well and we can continue to do this in the future. And until the next one, I'll catch you guys.